Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Lenox.
And I am Leska.
And it's Mr. Buddy. He's being a little bit rambunctious at the moment, so hopefully he doesn't tear the green screen down. It's a little goofball. So with today's story, as I mentioned in the last video, is going to be titled A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. And it deals with some sensitive topics, so just a warning there. If you're sensitive, you might not want to listen to this. It deals with family annihilators, and so today we're going to go through 3 stories of some recent events that have occurred in the last few years. And once we give you the backstory on those 3, next week we're going to go over how Lenox and her team get justice for all the victims involved in these stories. So just to give you a little bit of what is coming. So with that, I am going to start reading, and it's titled A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. They say the devil walks among us in human form, charismatic, alluring, and full of charm. At first he will gain your trust by exhibiting good acts, being kind and tending to your every need. There will come a moment where you feel completely safe in this person's company. You start to let your guard down, and in that moment, the moment he's been waiting for, he puts his plan into motion. He will systematically begin to insert ideas and deconstruct you layer by layer, slowly like peeling an onion, gaslighting you, using trickery in the cleverest of ways, making your mind spin, questioning all logic. Your certainty becomes confusion. Even though you are starting to have an inclination that something is off, you are unsure of yourself. You question your questioning and rationalize his behavior. More and more layers become undone. Soon, you are like a rose that has had all its petals picked off, one by one, until there was just one left. And then pluck. But just as that happened, a single drop of water landed on the bare head of the rose. Fortunately for you, but unfortunate for him. He had assumed your essence was completely gone, but what he failed to see is that single drop of water penetrated the seed and a sprout emerged. That little sprout gave you a renewed zest for life, a glimmer of the reality of your situation. That is the moment where he began to really show his true colors. Once that cocky ego reared its head, it was difficult to put back in. He underestimated that glimmer. Though flickering, it never went out.
In Colorado, a family that seemed to have it all, a beautiful, loving marriage, a gorgeous home in an affluent neighborhood, 2 beautiful children, and a 3rd one in the oven. To the world on social media, they had it all. For the husband, but looming beneath the surface, was wanting for more. It wasn't enough for him. In a world that's conditioned people to swipe left, to ghost those who've grown tired of, and move on to the new. A world where men feel they can use and discard of women, when playtime turns into the reality of family, responsibility, loyalty, the fun, passion subside for more subdued life filled with obligations. Women conditioned to showing their bodies, with the mentality of, I'm going to get mine. No man is off limits, for morality never existed in their being. When these 2 attitudes unite, the unimaginable happens. Both equally disgusting in his ungrateful state of mind. He gave in to the temptress's advances and began an affair. He told her many lies, and though she knew of deceit, for a quick glance at social media told the story of his family's life. She did not care.
She wanted what he had with his wife. The manipulation began. Taking advantage of his weak state of mind, she began to insert ideas. Ideas of them being married, having their own children, a big house, all life has to offer. Oh, but wait, you already have that with another woman. I won't be the only one. I want to be able to have our own child. But you already have two, not knowing that there was a third on its way. Their relationship was built on lies, fantasy, and lust, no substance. She made him feel fear that she was not going to come second to his family. Nor would she settle for less financially. Instead of doing what was right by his family, ending it and working on making things right, or taking the harder road of ending the marriage and incurring whatever financial responsibility in maintaining of his relationship with his kids, he thought, no, this would be too difficult. She will leave me if I have them in my life at all. So with that thought, the temptress impeded his mind. He committed the worst crime against God possible. He strangled her, watching the life drain from her eyes, killing her and his unborn son. He then threw her in his car and put his two daughters in for the ride to dispose of her body. As he buried her in a shallow grave, he glanced over to the two sweet, innocent girls, watching him dispose of their mother. He then with one hand strangled the tiny necks of his little girls, and then proceeded to break their limbs and spine, folding them in half, to stuff them into a chemical-filled silo.
The chemicals melted their beautiful force-lined skin, eating away at their flesh. Without a second thought, he went to a celebratory dinner with his temptress to rejoice in his new freedom. In Texas, young Taylor was dumped by her boyfriend. Unlike most women with average coping skills, drowning her sorrow in new hair, downing a pint of ice cream, Taylor took to darkness. She engaged in devil worshipping, black magic, and began heavily using drugs. Taylor started dating a new guy shortly after named David, who suffered from substance abuse. Taylor found this made him easy to control and manipulate him. One night, evil came over Taylor. She went to his basement apartment. The two of them used a lot of drugs and drank alcohol. When he was sufficiently wasted, she conned him into playing sex games. She then proceeded to cut him into pieces. She completely dismembered his body, removing his limbs, cutting his torso from his hips, and severing his head. She placed some of his body parts in bags and the head in a bucket.
Days went by, and David's mom grew concerned that she hadn't heard from him. She went to his apartment and noticed a horrible smell coming from inside. Annoyed was her thoughts. He must have left food in the trash before he went away for the weekend. So she took out her key to his place to take care of it. When she entered, she screamed in horror. Blood was smeared everywhere. She looked around, but there was no sign of him. And then she noticed the bucket. She went over, pulled the lid off to see her son's severed head looking back at her. Meanwhile, Taylor was at home unpacking the body parts that she took. When she noticed that the head wasn't there, she thought to herself, crap, that's the part I wanted the most. There was no remorse. All that was good in her had left her body. She was so consumed with hate for her ex-boyfriend that she took it out on an innocent man, manipulating him and then keeping his body parts as trophies.
In Virginia, Sam met Nancy. Nancy, being a gorgeous girl, a bit of a rebel, she had dropped out of school and was covered in tattoos. Sam came from a very religious family. He was enlisted in the Marines, but was so smitten he asked Nancy to marry him before leaving so that she can live with him at base housing. Sam's family did not approve of Nancy, but they decided not to interfere. While Sam was in training, Nancy got her GED and found a job when she realized she was pregnant. They struggled financially since military pay wasn't the greatest. Shortly after giving birth to their son, Nancy became pregnant again. This made Sam decide not to re-enlist since he needed to make more money to support his growing family. They struggled a bit at first until a famous female pastor went to Sam's church. His dad introduced him and she offered Sam a job. The pay was great, but he would have to travel a bit with the pastor. Sam and Nancy decided it was a great opportunity. Sam accepted the position, but the pastor had a few conditions. Sam was to at all times perform his duties and conduct his personal life with integrity and high moral values. The pastor immediately removes any staff that does not adhere to her conditions. Sam accepted and soon had enough money to buy a nice home for his family.
He was making enough to provide so that Nancy could stay home and raise their 2 boys. Sam began to travel more and more with the pastor, becoming distant from his family. This bothered Nancy, and though she was proud of the sacrifices he was making, she missed her husband. Soon arguments started. Sam grew more distance, which led to him having a wandering eye. He secretly started dating a gorgeous woman near the pastor's headquarters and eventually rented an apartment he would stay at with her. Sam was not used to the attention from women or his newfound financial success. It went to his head. He began to think that he deserved better. The new model girlfriend did not know that Sam was married because he never wore his ring. Nor did she know about his kids. Sam wasn't on any social media himself, though Nancy was. Nancy at home was becoming increasingly desperate. Sam had stopped coming home on the weekends. She barely saw him or even speak on the phone. She started to feel like a single mother. In hopes of saving their marriage, she got Sam to agree to come home for counseling and work on their relationship as a family. Sam agreed to try.
This made his girlfriend become suspicious, and she started going to church to see what he was up to. Sam was becoming desperate to keep his double life secret, for he can lose his job if the pastor caught wind of his indiscretions. Sam managed to calm her down, buying himself some time to come up with a plan. He told her he would be away for a week at an old family home to take care of listing it. That week, Sam acted like a doting father and loving husband. Nancy was overjoyed, believing he had her husband back. Little did she suspect that this was an act to throw off suspicion of what he was about to do. Sam took his rifle and shot Nancy in her sleep.
He then proceeded to violate her dead body and posed her in a compromising position. After doing this, he shot both of his sons at close range, blowing the back of his eldest head out. He bounded his youngest dead body to make it look like a satanic ritual. He then vandalized his own home, smearing his family's blood and guts on the walls in each room. Then taking a cans of spray paint to write satanic ramblings on all the walls in each room, in an attempt to cover up the gruesome murder of his entire family. The next morning, Sam packed up all the evidence and went out to dispose of it, waving to his neighbor as if nothing had happened, and making plans to have a cookout with them later that afternoon as a family. When he returned, he was going to put the act of his life. He ran outside in horror, pretending to look for the perpetrators that had killed his family. His neighbor ran out when he heard all the commotion. His wife was consoling Sam while her husband checked inside. He came out pale, vomiting from the trauma, calling to his wife to call 911. While Sam fell to his knees with screams, though no tears could be seen. So that gives you a little bit of the backstories of these three events. Again, a lot of the areas where it happened have been changed, and the names are made up just to protect the identity of these people. Some of them have already been prosecuted, and some are being prosecuted as we speak. Unfortunately, these stories are not made up. These events actually occurred, though the details have been modified for dramatic effect. So, on the second half of this story, Lexa and I and some of the other team members, we're going to get justice for the victims in these stories, and we're also going to try to find a way to prevent these occurrences from happening, to try to figure out what is causing people to commit such horrific acts against their families and people who love them unconditionally. So this is something that in the last few years is becoming more of a trend. Not a good trend, a tragic trend. But over the last few years, what used to be a very rare occurrence, a very rare crime, is becoming more commonplace. So we want to look into what is causing this and try to find a way to prevent it. And that's what Lenox and her team are going to do. Not only are we going to get justice for the victims and instill the proper punishment for the perpetrators, but we want to find a way to prevent this from happening. So, Lexa and I, we're going to say goodbye for today, but we will see you here next week with the second half of the story. So, we know that the details could be a little bit gruesome, and it's hard to believe that, you can't even make this stuff up. Like the girl who put her boyfriend's head in a bucket, like I almost laughed. I did laugh at that, just not because I think it's funny, but because it's just something so unimaginable. You would think it'd be made up, but this person actually did that, and it's disturbing. So we apologize if some of these occurrences can touch a nerve, but stick with us because we will try to avenge these deaths and learn from it, and make the world a better place. Even if it's in our imagination, we're going to get justice for these people and try to find a solution so that going forward we have less of these type of horrific crimes, and we can find a way to help people manage their stress and cope with all the uglies of life without turning to violence. There's always an option, and violence is never a good option. So with that said, the next video that I'll be shooting, you are going to be meeting Bully and Putintero, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lighter topic. So you're going to meet them, find out a little bit about their backstory, and it's going to be more in action and comedic relief. And then Lexa and I will be back next Tuesday with the continuation of A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. So we hope you guys have an amazing weekend, and we want to thank you again for listening. And don't forget to buy the book. You can get a copy. The links and where it's being distributed are going to be listed below, so you can look at that. And we will be back here next week. Until then, have a blessed weekend, and God bless.
Bye for now. Till next time.